All right. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the self-employed artist panel, where we will pretty much just ask our two lovely ladies how they, cultivate and get started making a career selling art for money. I'm your moderator and host for this fine panel. My name's Ryan Francis. I'm a comic book artist. I make self-published comics. I'm in the vendor hall here where, you'll see me, sell my books there. So stop by tomorrow or later today. And let's have our panelists introduce each other.
Yeah. I'm Shauna or Knight. I'm in the vendor hall with.
I thought you did have the fancy mushrooms.
I have the fancy mushrooms, among other fancy things. I have fancy shiny art. I have shiny prints. I have less shiny prints. And I have some smut books that I have written. I have some not smut books that I've written.
See, the problem with reading Jasper Ford's Shades of Grey immediately before 50 Shades of Grey was published was that I wanted to talk to everybody about this amazing novel I had just read, except they were all like, they all thought I was talking about, and I was like, no, not 50. There's no number in the title. There's no number in the title.
I hope my smut is better than that one, but it's such a low
smut.
bar that
it was not smut. It was this amazing novel about these people in the future living in a coloratocracy where like your position in society is determined by how much color you can see, and they have artificial color, and there's all this weird bizarre stuff. It's just bizarre.
Is this a society of mantis shrimp?
They would like my booth because there's lots of color. I will turn it over to you.
Anyway, I'm Melanie Silver, BA, MFA. I have a BA in graphic design, a BA in advertising art direction, and a master's in fine arts using beadwork as my medium. This is one of my pieces. Yeah, it's all beads, baby.
I thought that was chainmail from over here.
Baby, that's all glass beads, honey.
Nice.
Yes, I run 2 bead guilds, one in Schaumburg and one in Northwest Indiana, and if anybody wants a card before they leave, please feel free to come get one. Basically, my main source of income is graphic design, but this is what I do to keep my sanity. And yes, I do teach, I do sell my beadwork.
All right.
Do you know anything about when somebody needs to sign up for the chainmail workshop if they want to do the whole thing tomorrow?
I have no idea.
At the information, there's sign-up sheets at the information desk.
Okay, thank you.
And there was, at 5:30, 6 o'clock, there wasn't very many people signed up.
Okay.
Fantastic. So, let's get started. So, what got you saying, what first got you saying, yes, I could sell my art for money? What got you into just doing this for just in general in life?
My mom is an artist, and she did craft fair circuit and eventually had a booth at the Bristol Ren Fair. So I've been selling my art since I was about 10. So it was just kind of.
And what did you do when you were 10?
So there I was doing fantasy art at the time. Not good fantasy art, to be clear, but I was doing fantasy art. But what I was making, so I wanted a sword. Okay, I wanted a sword at the Ren Fair, and my mom was like, "Sure, if you buy it." Well, me being a motivated little.
Precocious?
Yeah, we'll go with that. I had a different word in mind, but we'll go with that's a good one. We'll go with that. So one of the events that my mom used to sell her artwork was Christmas in the Country, which is in Cedarburg, which is I don't know, I'm sure it still exists, but really big, people came from all over the place, and they'd line up to get into this, to attend and buy stuff, and it was a big deal, and it was lots of money. People spend a lot of money. So they had a little kids corner, and so I learned how to make origami boxes. So I took wrapping paper and made little origami boxes that fit into each other, and I baked little tiny bear sugar cookies and put them in a baggie and made these little boxes. And then I designed these little cards. And this was in the 90s.
I've sold origami boxes.
Yeah, it was a Christmas present looking box, but it had cookies in it.
Yeah.
And then I made gift tags and I designed a coloring book. And keep in mind, this is before print on demand. I went to the office copy shop with my black and white, and I made a coloring book at the office copy shop. So, I made cutesy little stuff. I targeted to the market and made cutesy little stuff that I wasn't really necessarily into, but it made money and I bought a sword. So, yeah.
Oh, I learned how to do beadwork for my mom, just simple stringing things, and I'd sell them. People would buy them right off me. I'd be wearing a necklace or a bracelet. Oh, I love that. How much? $5, whatever it was. I sell them off my body. I still do that to this day. People buy pieces I wear all the time.
That's amazing. I sell like aromatherapy jewelry, but but then again, I don't ever wear jewelry. So there would never be an occasion where somebody would ask to buy jewelry.
Well, you're your best billboard, essentially.
Well,
that's
not my thing. I'm genderqueer. I don't do jewelry for myself. But should I actually buy the t-shirts I sell on Redbubble and wear them?
Why not? Why not?
You
Like I said, you're your best billboard. I do.
This
some
is one of mine.
t-shirts.
This is a Redbubble.
Yeah.
One of mine. So you can do it on a tote bag. It doesn't have to be clothes.
I
sold them off of, just carrying.
Oh, yeah. My brother-in-law actually is a t-shirt printer, and I have him do my t-shirts, and I did some for Pride Week because my daughter's trans, and so I did some. Basically, it's the pride flag, the trans pride flag, and it's all swirled up. I changed it a lot, and I have different sayings on them. What I do is trans inclusionary, radical, mom, feminist, brother, sister, whatever. And I've sold a whole bunch of them because people take a look at that too. Wait a minute, what does that say? And I've had people actually get angry until they realize what the shirt says.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? How did you get started?
So, I think my first ever time I was, selling art in ever before maybe conventions is I used to read Captain Underpants.
Oh yeah.
And the characters in Captain Underpants, George and Harold, they made their own comics. They made Captain Underpants before they made their principal into the real Captain Underpants. But they were selling their comics for 10 cents. I was like, that's kind of cool. I'll sell my own comics for 10 cents. So I ended up drawing a comic called Captain Briefs. And I was drawing that, and obviously it was a rip-off of Captain Underpants. I was doing that, drawing just cool comics and cool adventures of just cartoons that I had already seen before, Dexter's Lab and stuff like that. Just drawing, little comics like that. And I would sell them to my friends at school for 10 cents, like a dime. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why 10 cents exactly, especially in back in, I'm guessing, 94. I was young. And it was one of those things where, it gave me more elation. It was my first, I'd say it was one of my earlier memories when it comes to doing art for other people and not just doing art for other people, doing art for money and saying, yes, I want to make that my job. I'd say that's the earliest instance. And it also got me into doing other aspects of art and, doing art projects in replacement for, school reports. So instead of doing an essay for my history report, I did a comic about Benjamin Franklin, and my teacher really liked it, and kind of showed it to my principal, and he was really liking it. He was trying to get me into doing more art things. I made a rudimentary board game, which my grade school principal, still had 10 years ago. He sent it back to me and said, hey, I still have your board game. And, he like gave it to me. I was like, oh, wow. And, we're Facebook friends these days. And it's kind of interesting just doing that kind of stuff. And a lot of that set me on the path of actually, doing more artwork. And I went to art college to, try to be an animator. And, I graduated there, and then the school building was bulldozed because it's an art institute.
Oh, been there, done that too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So much
Oh
fun.
yeah, did that, and I've been just doing a whole bunch of freelance stuff. But I didn't do the conventions things until probably 2019. Like I knew about conventions, but I felt like my art wasn't good enough. Even fighting that self-doubt and all that stuff for a bit. And so I was kind of like in that funk. And then one of my mom's friends or teachers or something like that, she said, hey, you should take your artwork to these conventions and show them to people. I was like, fine, I'll take it. So I did that, and I got critique and feedback, and said, hey, you should make a comic of all these characters that you draw. I was like, all right, I will do that. And so I spent 2019 and I'd say roughly the next 6 years trying to make this comic. This comic's called Shirley's Day. And it's a short 6-page story of a girl named Shirley going through her first day. Or it wasn't her first day, but it's like a day in the life of her school. And I was kind of like using the format of comics to kind of mess around with like the shots and stuff like that. Using a lot of my like college animation background stuff to make a comic. And of course, I learned a lot of stuff because I did a lot of redundant comic panels where, I could have made it much faster if I didn't do this. And, basically after 5 years of learning how to make a comic, I ended up, getting it printed and then taking it to my first ever convention in Joliet, Illinois. It was called Galaxy Comics Festival, Comics and Sci-Fi Festival. And that was happening for 3 years, which, they kind of ran out of funding. They kind of just moved on towards Star Wars Day in Joliet. So that's kind of how that went. But yeah, it was my first just taste of doing conventions. And then meeting the artists there, they told me about other shows that they do. And so it set me on the path to doing more conventions in general, and it kind of gave me the confidence to say, yes, I could indeed make money off making artwork. And it's easy to kind of fall into that self-doubt because, you spend so much time alone, you're kind of just in your studio at the drawing board or at the crafting table, and you're completely alone. Yeah, what kind of
Also,
question?
I just want to say, I think the age of the internet has both been amazing for art, but also can be very damaging to artists because you go onto like Pinterest or Flickr or something and you see all these things that are like, oh my god, this, like, because it allowed, like, before the internet, you'd go to like the state fair and like your pumpkin would be like this big and it would win first prize for being the biggest pumpkin. But then you get the internet and you see a pumpkin the size of a house and you're like, my pumpkin sucks. And it's like that with art. Like when you were just comparing yourself to the other people in town or whatever, you might have been a big fish in a small pond. But with the internet, you start thinking, my art doesn't look nearly that good.
Heck, even when I went to college, I had that feeling because it's like, I went to college, when you're leaving high school, you're kind of like, yeah, you're the best artist in high school. And it's kind of like, okay, your high school's what, maybe 100 students in your class or something like that. And then I went to college in Schaumburg, and now it's a grass patch.
Oh, we went to the same one.
Really?
The same dump.
Okay.
It's gone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but
Now it's not back.
I graduated 2009. Yeah, if I remember right, 2013 actually, because I started 2009, and then I spent 3 years. So that's 2013, 2012. Okay, I am doing my math wrong, but long story short, when I went to college, my mind was kind of dejected by like all the absolute art god. Well, they're not gods really, but they were exceptional.
Prodigies.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of them, they had different experiences or different ways that they learned art. Of course, one of my friends, he was actually like doing actual DC Comics work and things like that, actually working on like well, not Batman, but like more obscure stuff like The Spirit, if you've seen the movie with Sam Jackson and stuff like that. But he was doing stuff with that and doing actual professional DC Comics stuff. And obviously, I wanted to be like that when I grew up when I was younger. And now here I am meeting people who are all basically about to intern to those things. I'm like, okay, I need to work really, really hard to be exceptional. And then you kind of crash with the reality of your abilities and tastes versus what other people might be looking for in terms of, I guess, artistic success and things like that. Because the art college that I went to for animation, but it was more for 3D animation. Like, I'd say this is basically all the time where it's like 2D animation just going by the wayside. I believe it was a year that Princess of the Frog bombed because Harry Potter, I think the last Harry Potter movie came out that same year. So Disney was like, oh, 2D movies must not sell at all, so let's just dump it all ever and just go all in on Pixar and all that stuff. And it's kind of like, okay, looks like you're going to have to learn a really complicated 3D modeling program that takes forever to get a character to even be set up as a puppet rig to be able to move. And I'm kind of like, in the time it takes me to learn this, I could have drawn that same character 15 times. And earlier I was kind of just vehemently against learning 3D modeling. And these days I feel like if I had a teacher who kind of like encouraged me to see the interesting stuff with 3D art, I probably wouldn't have hated 3D modeling as much, because learning a 3D modeling program is complicated without someone to kind of just hold your hand and make sure, you get through the weird rigmarole of going through like all the windows and the settings and stuff like that. It makes it tougher. I think these days, with some good tutorials, I could pick it up. Like Blender's free, and apparently it has a way simpler user interface than 3D Studio Max, which was what they were learning at my art college, because around the surrounding companies, where you had like a bunch of mobile game companies and I think Facebook game companies, there used to be Facebook game companies, because Facebook used to have Facebook games like Farmville and stuff like that. But yeah, it had also like a few 3D games that used the Unity engine, and Unity engine basically got famous because it was a 3D engine that could run a web browser. So that was why you had a lot of Facebook games able to be in 3D. So you had a lot of companies basically asking people to do 3D assets. Casino game companies also needed 3D assets for like their like little reels and things like that, and also the phone games. Phone games were starting to pop off back in 2012. Actually, it's probably earlier, but yeah. Basically, 3D was getting popular, but I was not liking 3D, so I ended up kind of, I guess, refusing to learn 3D. And sometimes I feel like I regretted not learning 3D because, there are things like 3D printing, and that I would love to do 3D printing. I would love to make my own action figure.
Oh, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I have a 3D printer.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I managed to find a 3D print 3D model fab or something like that. But I found a nib holder, so it was like a holder that could hold those metal nibs and things like that. And I went to my local library, which they had a computer lab with 3D printing stuff. And I was like, okay, I'll pay like $2 to just get that print and pay for the film and all stuff like that. And they got it done in like basically 7 hours. And I got myself basically a custom-made nib holder. I was like, holy cow, this is insane. And I'm like, I want to learn how to do 3D modeling proper because holy cow, I would love to like just have little statuettes and stuff like that to sell.
Well, if you want to pay for it, the Adobe Suite does have a 3D modeling program.
Okay.
If you're doing
not
fairly
cheap.
simplistic things, Tinkercad is free and you can do it in a web browser.
Okay.
Or
And
depends.
it's really easy to learn. Like, I mean, the learning curve is, I mean, some CAD program, like 3D programs are hard to learn, but Tinkercad is, I mean, you can learn to make stuff like really quickly, but it's not that great for realistic action figures. It's more for, I mean, you can do a lot of like making gears and little machines and stuff, but I've used it for various things. But there are various other tools online. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, and that's one positive thing about just the internet is there are so many alternative tools for like even like 3D modeling stuff. Like there's a lot of alternatives for Blender, and you could like find a bunch of either more complicated programs or more simpler 3D programs. I've heard this one called PicoCAD, and you know it's inspired by the old like video game concept of Sega Pico, and it's like this really small portable game that Sega used to make back in the day. And basically, it's I wouldn't call it a vector-based but I'd say most 3D modeling programs are vector-based, but don't quote me on that. But yeah, it's basically you're able to make simple, super low poly, just 3D models and stuff like that. And they're good for like making short, tiny games. So there's so many like little bits of that, like especially since a lot of them are freeware donation, where you don't have to blow $500 a full freaking suite of a subscription.
Figuring out the right tools for what you're doing and finding out the ways to afford those tools that's a whole professional artist tangent. Because I know a lot of people are trying to divest from Adobe products right now because of all the AI, and also the subscription costs, which are ludicrous. And like you can pry my copy of Adobe, or I have the CS6.
Yep, me too.
But
I got 5.5.
I hear that it's not working on some of the newer OSs.
It doesn't.
So I've got Windows 10, and I'm gonna have to like do
Yeah.
CPR on that machine to keep it alive because
I know, I finally had to dump it off of my machine because it just said, sorry. Gave me the finger and up and died. So it's like, nope.
I know eventually I'm gonna have to switch over to one of the alternatives for Photoshop and Illustrator, but I don't want to have to learn a new app.
I know.
It
so
can
much
be
other
tough,
things
but
to
there are
do.
ways that you can learn, like
yeah,
adjusting your
it's
shortcut
a
keys to
lot.
be something common and stuff like that. Basically.
Yeah.
Just being autistic and chronic pain, chronic fatigue,
Oh, yeah.
and a number of other things. Like, just I don't have the spoons to do
Yeah.
it, but eventually I know I'm gonna have to because there's a point when it's
You gotta do it.
it's not gonna work on my machine, and I refuse.
Well,
to pay the
unfortunately, being a
subscription.
graphic designer, that's what my field calls for.
Yep.
But I still get people calling for Flash, which is a program
Yeah.
that has died a miserable death like 10 years
I
ago.
used to do Flash.
Oh,
back
I
in
learned
the
how to
day.
animate
I
with
hated it
Flash.
too.
Hated it.
I loved looking at it when somebody did it well. Like I
couldn't do it.
I loved a good Flash site, and then I would be trying to do one, and I'm like, my
Oh.
brain does not work like this.
I love my Flash professor.
Yeah.
She was an absolute sweetheart. The program, I could have drop kicked out a window.
I actually went to the Macromedia user convention back in '99. Yeah,
Oy.
yeah, and they're whatever they're people who worked there were running a lot of the classes and things, and they're just doing this and they're making it look easy, and I'm like,
No, it's not easy. But yeah, I get occasionally when I apply for jobs and they interview me, it's like, oh, do you know Flash? And I'm like, well, somewhat. However, Flash is a dead program. It's been dead for 10 years.
Yeah.
Nobody is
Nobody
doing it.
Yeah, it's not supported.
It's not supported. I mean, I can do other things on other programs that are similar. Oh, well, we want somebody who knows Flash.
Yeah, and I feel like
No.
they're just answering.
No.
They're just checking things off.
Yeah.
They don't. Yeah, they don't know.
No, they don't have a clue.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you try to explain to them, Flash is dead. It's been dead for a decade. Nobody will support Flash.
So you just say yes and then never use it.
Yeah, that's kind of how
That's
you
a
gotta do.
problem,
You
though,
gotta
because I
do
did have a
magic.
client that asked me to do a Flash banner, and I'm like, okay, well, I can't because it doesn't exist anymore. Sure it does, it's right here. Well, yeah, okay, but it's not gonna run on your current system.
Right.
So, yeah, not good it's gonna do you, but I mean, people
Yeah.
are, you try to explain things and it just, no.
That's a big
Yeah, because
reason
it's
why
mostly
I,
like a marketing brand thing where it's like, well, we'll just hire the creatives to go do the creative thing.
I
We'll
used to
make more
do
money.
freelance graphic design
Yeah.
after I got out of corporate, and I'm not good at the client relation part of things when
See,
people.
I love commissions.
Yeah.
I also have pathological demand avoidance, which perimenopause is making vastly worse, ridiculously worse. So as soon as anybody wants me to do a thing, I suddenly can't do it. It doesn't matter how much I would like to do it, I no longer can do the thing. So I can't really do commission work right now until I figure out a way through this. But the last cover design job that I did for somebody, she wrote a book, and I was trying to ask her what the genre was, or genres, you know, because they can cross over. Basically, I was trying to find out, do we need to put the half-naked guy on the cover?
Yeah.
Because that lets you know the level of smut. If there's no head, you're at 5-star smut.
Yeah.
Like if there's no head, that's
That's the cue.
that's the cue that, like, you're going to Pound Town and no doors are closed.
I didn't know there was like an actual code to
although now, because cover design trends change, and the last time I published was about 8 years ago, and all the trends have changed. So now there's discrete covers, and that's what most people want. So they don't look like
Yeah.
smut, but they are.
See,
And
that's why you
no
read it on your
fun.
Kindle so no one can tell what you're reading.
Right, or like you've got, if you're on the train with this book,
Yeah.
everybody knows what you're reading.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, so there's the whole discrete covers, and the discrete covers are gorgeous, but they look like they're more like just a normal fantasy. And they're not, there's, your fucking dragons and tentacles and stuff, and it's like, I'm like, okay.
You've actually totally blown my mind on that, because I'm like, I've been noticing that a lot of, I guess, romance covers tend to look like Twilight ripoff covers, where it's like, okay, you have the single image of an object and just an object, and then it's a title.
Those are the discrete
Yeah.
covers, and those are very
Yeah.
popular right now. But yeah,
Or they were in series.
the last cover design job that I had, basically I was trying to get out of this woman what her book was about and what the genres were, because I'm like, okay, is it a romance? Is it a paranormal? Is it an urban fantasy? And it was a Facebook chat, and I copied and pasted the whole conversation so that I could try and pick out things. And she was like, well, I want a raven on the cover, and I want a man on horseback in the moonlight with the horse rearing, and I want a skull. And she kept talking about the things she wanted, and I was like, okay, the cover is a promise to the reader of what the book is about, and it tells you what the genre is and the experience you can expect. I said, so is the focus a mystery? Is the focus a romance? Are we seeing the sex? Like, these are all the things that, and she couldn't answer those questions, and I wanted to self-lobotomize.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's writing a book.
It was something like 5,000 word chat that I copied and pasted, and still
Had no
reading.
clue.
Still had no clue. It's like, okay, are they bonking where you see everything? Which is fine. I just need to know, because you need to let your readers know that. Yeah. So I was like, no, I'm done. I'm done with that.
Stick a fork in you, you're done.
Yeah, my side gig is doing decluttering and organizing because it's so much easier. I go in, I clean somebody's mess up, they cry, and they give away grandma's dishes, and then I'm done.
See, to me, that would be so stressful.
Oh no, it's great because it's not mine. It's not mine. We have a box of dishes, and I say, okay, is this a box? Is this keeping? Is this going? And they're like, oh, that's grandma's dishes. The answer is never yes or no. It's always, this is grandma's dishes. Okay. Well, I never use them, and we keep tripping over the box, and I've had it sitting there for 10 years, and they tell me the story of grandma's dishes, and then they start to cry, and so is this, do you want to keep these, or is this something I can maybe donate? I said, it sounds like you're not really getting a lot of use out of these, and your grandma probably wouldn't want you to, like, this is a lodestone at this point. I said, but if you want to keep them, that's fine too. I say, I think I can donate them. I think grandma will be okay. And I say, I absolve you. It's okay. And then I put them in my car and I take them to Goodwill, and they are no longer tripping over that box, and it's not mine.
You need to come over to my house.
Yeah. Let me know. I like doing it. Because I leave and people have a space that's easier to work with, and they get to absolve their guilt of all this stuff that they've been holding on to, and it's good money, and then because being an artist is not always good money.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like it because I go in and it's done.
Yep.
I go in and it's done. It's not a client job where they're like, well, can you maybe change this entirely and make it green? No, I cannot make it green.
And I'm sure a lot of us lost business too after COVID.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the businesses that I dealt with as a graphic designer were basically small businesses, single owner, pair owners, whatever.
Yep.
And a lot of them closed up shop during COVID.
Yep.
So I
Yep.
was kind of like in a lurch. And between that and going back to school for my my MFA, it was like, oh, just kill me now.
Yeah.
Just please put me out of my misery.
Well, and we're going to be running into more of that. A lot of small business, a lot of small artists are going out of business. I'm right on the edge myself. My sales dropped 30 to 50% this year, depending on the event. So yeah, it's a lot of small businesses are closing.
Yeah,
Is
that's a
it
shame.
that younger people just don't buy things?
No, it's because
Oh,
the economy is crashing for those of us at the bottom.
People have lost
Yeah.
jobs. People aren't buying unessential things.
You can't, if you can't afford groceries, you can't afford a tiara.
Right.
And for a while, 25% of my income was tiaras. I had an assistant that I was hiring every other week, and we had I call it the crown log. It's a roll of bubble wrap, and we put crowns on it, and we put the jewels on. So we have to roll the crown log and wait for the jewels to dry, and then we roll it. So we were making them 12 at a time, and working on other jewelry, and I couldn't keep stock up. And then all of a sudden, in September a year ago, my sales just
Yeah.
and I haven't made crowns in a year because they don't sell anymore. So yeah, it's student loan payments started back up. People noticed their grocery bill had doubled.
Yeah.
It's just rent.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just it's a lot of being an artist is adapting to this stuff, and
Gotta make do.
yeah, you got to figure out a way to keep limping along. Right now, I'm trying to figure out, it used to be, and we were talking about this before we started. It used to be, I could, based on how much I was paying for my booth fee, the more I was paying for my booth fee, the more I was going to make, and it was really easy math for me.
Not now.
And that's not now. That's yeah. The last event that I did before this one, SuperCon in Sioux Falls, I did half what I did last year.
So what are booth fees run? Like a range?
So my booth fee here was around $250.
Yeah, it's cheap.
Plus, yeah, it's very cheap. Plus, your hotel badges, etc. For Gen Con, for a 10 by 10 corner, I paid $3,200. My hotel bill is about $1,400, and then there's my helpers.
Yeah.
But you make a lot more money at Gen Con than you would make
It's
here.
a huge con.
Gen Con's my best event of the year, and Gen Con's the only event where I didn't have a loss. Or you know, I made less than I made last year. I made exactly the same amount this year that I did last year. You know, it depends. There's like Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con. Because I usually do a 10 by 20. 10 by 20 would be like 8K, I think.
Wow.
Plus driving to California, it's a 2-day drive.
Yeah.
So 2 days of hotel.
Yeah,
So I
it's all
went
that.
to Dragon Con and
I
can't
would
imagine.
love to get into Dragon Con, but I keep getting waitlisted.
I can't believe how long you had to stand in line just to get into the building where the dealers were.
Yep.
Wow.
It was insane. I went once, I may never go
Reminds
again.
me
There
of
was a lot of
ASEN.
standing in line.
Yeah.
I do ASEN.
Central, yeah.
But there were
Yeah.
75,000 people there. But how many of them got into the dealer's room?
Not many.
All 5 floors of it.
Yeah. Yeah, people like there's Dragon Con usually, like people who do Dragon Con, Gen Con, Dragon Con, San Diego Comic Con. There's a number that always make people's top 10. Dragon Con's always on it. So yeah, that would be one where it'd be worth the expenditure to do it.
Well,
I mean, how does so if a new artist was trying to get started, like learning how to find convention, how would they learn how to find such places?
They had a whole floor of anime illustrators at Dragon Con.
Yep.
One whole floor.
Yep. They have. I think that's relatively newish. They have different places for different types of artists. Because
Right.
there's an art show which is in the Hyatt, and then there's the floor.
Well, they didn't
of the
have
anime. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they did have a little, yes, they did have a little art show.
Yeah, the art show in the Hyatt is more for like the fine artists.
arts,
Yeah.
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 Well, there's lists online of all different kinds of shows, conventions.
Yeah.
The state of Illinois actually has a database of art shows, conventions, all sorts of things. A good way to get started is do an art show, not necessarily a convention, believe it or not, but a general art show. You know, they got them all over the summer. Every weekend you got 10 of them or more a day. And I know people who've started out doing that and have made a fortune and then gone on to the bigger conventions with their work and have done great because they've learned kind of the pitfalls. Because when you're at a regular mundane art fair, art show, you get a lot of different kinds of people. Some people are going to think you're the greatest thing that ever walked the earth, and then other people are going to look at you like, what the bloody hell is this crap?
Yeah.
And you got to kind of like, okay, how do I shift my focus to kind of go sort of middling? You got to kind of work. Sometimes depends on the show.
Yeah, it depends
on the show.
Yeah.
But what I find in general, especially with the things I do like this, I tend to attract a lot of people who are looking for gifts, especially higher end gifts, because this particular piece I'm wearing around my neck is $1,500 because it's gold wash, silver wash.
And how long does it take you to do that?
This particular was my first, so it took me about a week and a half because I was tearing it apart, swearing and throwing things a lot because
yeah, I
it
get
was, I was learning how to do the pattern for myself because I invented the pattern, but I was playing around with it and stuff. But generally I have pieces that start at $30 for small things all the way up to a couple thousand. I'm working on a couple of projects right now where I've got some bags that I'm beading, purses that I'm beading. And those are gonna go for probably a couple $1,000s when all's said and done, because the bag itself retails for almost $400. I didn't pay that,
Right.
but that's what they retail for. So you gotta really just try things, you know.
A lot of it's finding where your audience is.
Yeah.
Because like I grew up in Cedarburg, Wisconsin for a while. After getting out of an abusive relationship, I had to move back in with mom, which sucks to have to do that. But I had a little bit of time to kind of refocus, and So I did, there was a local art fair that I did and sold nothing because my stuff does not sell to a mundane audience. It just doesn't. So I travel around the country. I travel to the East Coast. I travel to the West Coast. I spend a lot of time in my car or my van because it's a cargo van. And so for me, going to where my audience is an important part of it, and figuring out what that. So I do a lot of big conventions. I do Gen Con. Gen Con's my best event, but I also have done Comic Cons. I've done anime conventions. I do the best at gaming conventions, anime conventions, but not Comic Cons. I don't do nearly as well as Comic Cons, and I have some theories as to why. It's tangent. I did really well at ShyCon a couple of years ago when WorldCon was here in Chicago. ShyCon was an art buying audience. I think I sold
stuff sold for 3 times as much in the art show there as at Will Gear.
I sold on Saturday afternoon at ShyCon. I think I sold something like $3,000 worth of art.
Wow.
Of original pieces.
Well, people make that an event. They make that their vacation. Therefore, they're going to have money to spend, and they're going to spend it.
So one of the reasons I chose to do WindyCon, full transparency, WindyCon is way too small of an event for me given my setup and the complexity. But I live 2 hours away, and it's an art buying audience.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I also had a gap in my schedule because one of the, if you're interested in vending at conventions, one of the things that's going on that you need to be aware of is that so many people are trying to do art full time now that when applications go up for events like, Twin Cities Con, Midwest Gaming Classic, Anime Central, whatever, any event, they're getting thousands of applications for artists and vendors. Thousands, like overwhelming numbers of applications. So events that I used to have no problem getting into, I'm getting waitlisted for, because there's just so many people applying, and you're competing against more people. So that's another facet to all this. Is it's.
And then they can raise their table fees because they've got so many people applying.
Well, and also the convention centers are raising their fees, and a lot of convention centers are union, and the unions are raising their fees, which I'm all in favor of, but it raises what we have to pay. And then, so we're paying more for table fees, but people are spending less. And it's putting people out of business. I see vendors posting all the time that they're like, I'm making no profit at this point because people are spending less and I'm paying more. I can't afford to vend.
Right.
So those are realities of doing it. But yeah, there's not just finding the events. You also want to do some intelligence gathering. There are vendor groups. There are artist alley groups. There are groups for the whatever type of vending you want to do. There's probably a Facebook group for it. And I'm on a few groups where people will post about hey, this event runner was clueless and this was a really shitty event, or the load-in was terrible and they didn't know what was going on. You want to gather that kind of intelligence because as someone who has arrived at an event and it's all been totally screwed up, you want to prevent that as much as possible. You're not going to prevent everything, shit happens, but you want to know. I call it the fucking. I call it fucking when you get to an event to set up and there's something terribly wrong. Like there's a pillar in the middle of your booth, or the loading dock is not open, or there is no loading dock and there's no way to haul your stuff up with carts, or there's no double doors, or
they won't let you in the front door.
Right. Or the vendor coordinator told you to load in through the front of the hotel, and the hotel staff is like,
yeah. Oh, been there, done that.
yeah.
Question. So I have participated in a number of convention art shows, and I have had this conversation at least 3 times where I have been packing up my art and somebody has come by and said, oh, that piece didn't sell, that's a shame, I really liked that one. And I was like, yeah, I'm surprised it didn't sell either. I mean, the minimum bid was only like $3. And they're like, really? If I had known that, I would have bid on it. And I was like,
That's the hilarious thing,
see,
especially with things
people
like, yeah.
see my work, they like it, but they don't bother to check what the minimum bid is because I've had people tell me multiple times if they had known how cheap it was, they would have bid on it. But do you have any suggestions for how I can?
People don't read.
Yeah,
People don't read.
People don't look.
But
I never knew the Kickstarter problem was happening in real life, where you are spending an entire month shouting in the void that you are selling your work,
I have
only
signs.
to close things down, and then suddenly get an email and say, "Is the thing still going?"
I have signs with prices all
I-
over my booth, and people will say, "How much is this?"
Yeah, oh, I get it too.
That much. That sign in.
Well, and when you're in an art show, you're balancing your minimum bid with what you'd really like to
to get at an
get.
auction, yeah.
And, you know.
Yeah, I know.
And what you really wanted to do is to get two people who really want it, because then it
And
sells
fight
for
it off.
way more money
Yeah.
than you were
Yeah, I know.
expecting.
If things go to auction, the price goes astronomical. And I mean, but it's just so flabbergasting to me that this has happened not just once, not just twice, but numerous times where people have been like, if I had known it was that cheap, I would have bid on it. Like, and I was like, you saw it, you liked it, you didn't bother to see what the minimum bid was. I mean, like,
Well, this
like,
convention,
what
this
happens.
is the first one I've seen who has signs up in the art show about how to fill out make your bid on the bid sheet. I'm like, really?
oh yeah, believe me, the people and people, but then people
That is
will,
needed.
even those signs, people will ignore those signs.
Oh,
and
yeah.
People don't still have problems with filling out their bid sheets.
Yeah.
I think it's I think there's a psychological phenomenon called I forget what it's called, but it's like when you're seeing the same image of a thing like an advertisement so many times, you start to go blind to it. And since it's such a normal thing to the scenery, your brain kind of just starts to just ignore how significant it is. Unless you do something like have a different image for the same information. That's what a lot of advertisers will do to kind of keep their brand aware and stuff like that.
There's also a thing where, and I know this because I sit in my booth all day vending, and there are things that people say when they really actually weren't prepared to buy art, but they're trying in their very awkward way to communicate something appreciative, but it doesn't actually come across that way.
Like the people at so the most recent art market I went to, somebody tried on a necklace and was like, I love this, I definitely want to buy it, I just need to go get my purse from my boyfriend, and they went to go get their purse and never came back.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
That
no,
happens all the time.
no.
Well, they're making an excuse why they're not taking
Yeah,
it.
yeah. You could just say, wow, I love this, but it's not something I would wear that often, but it doesn't fit my budget right now, or,
right.
I mean, why can't you just be on it? I mean, why
Oh,
do you
that's a
have to
Midwest
say
politeness
you're
right
Oh,
gonna
there.
buy
I was gonna
it?
say that's a
Anyway.
neurotypical Midwest politeness.
Yeah.
I guess. Anyway, I gotta go to the art show to turn my battery things off.
May the force be with you.
All right.
Yes, have a nice day. Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of like that Midwest politeness where they don't want to outright say, "Oh, I can't afford your stuff," but they have to make this weird, let you down easy
And if
thing.
you don't get the opposite end, where they say, oh, I got a friend who can do this for less money.
Then
Oh,
do it.
yeah.
Then
Or
do
they
it.
walk by and go, wow, I could do that.
Yeah, then do it. Or
But there's the sticker shock. I
Yeah.
think I mind that less
Yeah,
than the
yeah.
weird excusey things people do. Like people will look at one because like one of my paintings that's about this big is they'll sell for around $800, and they'll be like 8. 100? Like, yeah, it's hand painted. And they're like,
It's also the original.
It takes a long time.
hard.
Well, and when you're at it, I mean, I go to a lot of art shows, and you're looking at art, and sometimes, you know, wow, this is really fabulous. I have absolutely no wall space left, but this is really fabulous.
Yeah, I hear that from people all the time. They're like, yeah, we ran out of wall space 40 years ago. I'm like, yeah, that's...
Yes, I bought something in a 5x7 frame, and I'm still looking for someplace to hang it.
Great. Yeah.
But yes, because yes, there's a lot of things you love, but it doesn't mean you want to own them.
Yeah. So yeah, there's lots of weird little excusey things people say that I just like if they say they're coming back for it. I never. Every once in a while they will, and I'm shocked. I'm like,
I go back.
yeah.
And
I was
it's
looking
very
for
well.
go back, but yes, I would say
You came back for it.
Made my day.
Yeah. And you know, it can be easy to kind of like fall into that self-doubt, but like, how would you like tackle making sure that it's, you know, you don't fall into that self-doubt trap of thinking, oh, this didn't sell that well. Is it me, or is it my art, or is it them? Like, how would you manage that?
or say you're at
It's
the
the
wrong
venue.
place.
I mean, there's lighting. I invested. If you come to my booth, I will happily info dump on lighting with you. When I added lighting to my booth, my sales doubled.
Oh, yeah.
Do you have much problem
That's
with that?
fascinating.
Probably, but I have no inventory tracking system, so I couldn't actually tell you how much gets stolen other than I'll notice all of a sudden that a whole bunch of dragon pendants are gone and I didn't sell any of that either. So I have a vibe that some of my smaller stuff probably does get stolen. But honestly, that stuff is so cheap to produce that like
Karma will get them
Yeah.
eventually.
The
I
guilt
was
will
just,
destroy
I mean,
them
because so many
inside.
times you go and they don't really have the things fastened in any way that you think it would be. And my girlfriend got a booth. She does beaded jewelry, and she got a booth at. It was more like a flea market with artists. It was not a good venue for her, and she ended up selling one thing and having like 12 pairs of earrings stolen.
Ooh, that hurts.
But it just wasn't. It was one of those things at a fairgrounds, and it just. She needed a higher end vendor.
Yeah.
But, you know, her theory was, well, you know, no one wants to buy something from a fat lady. I'm going, I don't think that was it.
No, it's the venue.
No, it's the venue.
It's the
yeah.
venue.
I had somebody who was trying to get me into a flea market because I had been posting on Facebook about not having any events, and she's like, "Well, I run this flea market in Madison, where I live," and I was like, "It's not worth me paying my team to set up."
No.
Yeah, it's not.
Okay, 5 minutes.
All right. So I suppose a final question that I will ask is, I mean, what are your hopes for just future shows? Like you mentioned, the future. What would you see that would kind of be out there in the future at the moment? Do you see venues just continue to climb until they just collapse on themselves? Or something insane like that.
I mean, put bluntly, after Tuesday, I have no hopes, and I'm worried my business is falling apart, and I'm starting to look for work. So, that being said, at some point, I feel like the economy is gonna have to unfucking itself at least a little bit. Because it does go in.
Yeah.
It does do that.
It's got to rebound at some point.
It's got
a
to
little
rebound
bit.
at some point, and I that is my hope that it does.
Yeah,
that's my hope.
I mean, a lot of cons have gone out of business past few years, unfortunately, and some might be fairly soon too, unfortunately.
But I think part of it is younger people in their 20s and 30s, they don't collect things and they don't buy that many things.
Right.
Mostly because they can't. They don't have
Even, I mean, my niece, she's an aerospace engineer. She makes great money, but she just doesn't. And her friends who, they just don't buy that much stuff.
Does she have the house space or the wall space to even stash that stuff?
I think we have to
Yeah,
call it.
She's looking to buy a
I've got to get
house.
another panel.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, thank you everyone
Thank
for
you.
stopping
Thank you.
by, and this has been
Thanks
an
for
amazing conversation.
Hanging out with our
Well,
super
it was
hanging out with
interesting.
all
If
of us.
anybody wants to find me, I'll probably be in the con suite after my last panel.
Oh yeah.
I'll be there most of the weekend otherwise.
I will be at my booth.
We'll find you.
Saturday is the best time to shop at my booth because Sunday I'm almost gonna have to start taking down at noon to be out of there at 5 when they want us out there.
All right.
So that's gonna be it.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you all very much. It's been great.
Thank you.
To the last panel.